Understanding yourself as a player early in your career can be a great advantage because it allows you to be more precise with your effort and focus. Finding a role that you can identify with is an important part of advancing your level as a player. It allows you to build an identity and focus on the skills that you are required to excel at. I'll introduce a modern approach to understanding yourself in-game and defining your role in the team you play in. Then I define how this approach fits into classical view of roles in Counter-Strike. So why is this important? Well, each successful team requires a balance of different roles and personalities. Creating a perfectly balanced team is pretty much an art, and thus gaining an understanding in this topic is extremely valuable. A core aspect of finding a team is creating your identity within the game that you yourself and others can recognize. This allows teams to recognize your value and decide if you are what they need. It also allows you to recognize whether you are a good fit for a specific team. It helps to resolve cognitive dissonance. Well, imagine having a goalie that wants to shoot goals. It is easy to see how devastating that would be for a team. You need to understand how you want to fit in the teams you are going to play to harmonize within it. It is important to consciously choose to execute your role. If you are a leader, you have to act like a leader even when you don't feel like it. If your role requires a certain amount of discipline, you have to actively focus on playing disciplined. To find a role, using my experience, I've tried to devise a framework that you can use. It focuses on your core traits and define your in-game personality. The first core trait I've chosen is initiative. Initiative defines how active you are as a player and how much variety you like to bring to your game. On the passive end of the spectrum, you tend to be more static, preferring to hold a section of the map on your own, reacting to what happens. Active teammates like to constantly execute decisions to gain space on the map and attempt to break the opponent's plan. Some questions that would help you define whether you are in this active or passive zone are these. So, do you prefer to create the game around you or to react to what's happening? Or another question would be, do you like to order your teammates what to do in order to support you correctly? Second core trait I want to talk about is conscientiousness. So conscientiousness is your willingness to take risks, basically your relationship to risk and reward. Players with high conscientiousness are playing by the book, meaning they will prefer to stick to their protocols and routines in their spots. They also tend to be more disciplined. Players on the other side of the spectrum with low conscientiousness are happy to bend the script and rely on their instinct, risk more, and be more unpredictable. And by the way, here is my video explaining what it means playing by instinct and how intuition plays a huge role in Counter-Strike. So if you're interested, please do check that out. And again, here are the few questions that would help you to put yourself on the spectrum. So do you like to be structured, play as perfect as much as you can, or do you enjoy chaos and taking risks? Third trait that defines your role is extroversion. So extroversion is a trait that isn't really easy to define in the context of CS because it is most expressed in TeamSpeak and not in game. By the book, we would characterize it by talkativeness, sociability, assertiveness, and excitability. So high extroversion would be considered when players speak out, have strong voice, and always offer their opinion. People that basically like to talk. This creates natural effect in game where these people organize the game, hype the team, and keep the energy flowing. Low extroversion, on the other hand, players are more silent and they allow space for other, more active roles to communicate the ideas. These people might also find it hard to state their opinion within a group, which is something that they often have to work on. And again, to put yourself into the spectrum, do you like to talk regardless the circumstances? Are you able to voice your opinion in front of the group? These should help you to put you somewhere in the spectrum to understand whether you're rather extroverted or introverted. To give an example of how these core traits work in Pro Team, I'd like to give you an example from my time in Mousesports. While I was part of this team, I took many supportive and anchor roles. My initiative was definitely in passive side of the spectrum, conscientiousness was very high, and I was rather introverted back then. When I was benched in Mouse, I was surprised to find my replacement was Snax, whose traits were polar opposites of mine. Snax was, throughout his career, a player with high initiative, lower conscientiousness, and knowing this, it might have been primary reason why that lineup struggled with consistency, as they won one event and failed to string on that success. So, to make my point, allow me to assign classical roles in CS through these core traits that we just spoke about. Classically, throughout the history of CSGO, people have been mostly talking about 4 main roles. So let's start with the CT roles. You're gonna have an anchor or 2. These players are gonna have higher conscientiousness, lower initiative, and also lower extroversion. Then another role that is very important is having a playmakers/riflers. These players having lower conscientiousness, higher initiative, and also higher extroversion. Another role that you would have is obviously an AWPer. These players having higher conscientiousness, high initiative, and usually extroversion doesn't really impact this role. So last thing we didn't cover is IGL, and he is defined as high extroversion and initiative as well. So this means he will always naturally fit into playmaker/rifle role or AWPing role. Only exception might be Mirage CT, because usually these in-game leaders are put into BEP's position, which is only low activity spot for them. And let's move on to the D roles. So you will have 2 extremity players. These players are having higher conscientiousness, lower initiative, and also lower extroversion. Another set of players would be playmakers/space makers, and preferably having 2 of them. So these players are having lower conscientiousness, higher initiative, and also higher extroversion. AWPing on T side is usually tied with higher conscientiousness, higher initiative, and again, extroversion usually impacts this role less, similar to what we spoke about CT side. And then IGLing is same as the CT role. This one is high extroversion and initiative, therefore we see him mainly as playmaker/space maker or occasionally an AWP. And this can be seen in players like Jame, while IGLing for Virtus.pro, or Fallen IGLing back in Brazilian teams or Team Liquid, and Nitro as well back in Liquid. So throughout my long career, I developed as a player and naturally transitioned through a variety of roles. I started as a playmaker at the start of my career. Shortly after, I was moved into extremity and anchor positions. After a successful run with MOUZ, I decided to challenge myself and become more active in game, moving back into more playmaking roles. After a few years, I again ended back in the anchor and extremity positions, as I understood I contribute to the team most through these roles. I want to emphasize that this journey is needed for every single player to determine where his true impact lies. And I hope through this video you can find it more efficiently. Thanks to this framework, you should be able to pinpoint what roles are fitting you and you can thrive in. It is much easier to play the role that fits you and become a master of it compared to playing the wrong role and try to change your characteristic as a human being. This will not only make you play better, you will realize that you start improving at a much faster rate because things will suddenly click and fall into place. There are players on top level who have changed their roles throughout their careers, and that is completely normal. We all develop as human beings, and you are a different person at 25 compared to when your career started at, let's say, 18. On top of that, these players have access to psychologists who help them develop a profile that shows what is the best for them and the team. And so, thanks for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. And if you enjoyed it, you will probably like this one about finding your true skill in CSGO. See you there, and bye-bye.